Dr. Relan, good
Hi.
evening. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for
I know.
having me.
No, I've been so excited. The moment we got connected, I was like, I have to get Dr. Raylan here and talk to us one night. And that night is tonight. Dr.
Yay.
Raylan, if you could first please introduce yourself to everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. My name is Manisha Relan, and I am a pediatric allergist. I'm actually from Detroit. I was born in India, grew up in Detroit, and did my med school there, and then matched into residency in New York. And then I've been in New York, the state of New York, ever since. I've just moved around everywhere. I did my residency in Rochester. I did my NICU hospitalist year, which we can talk about in a minute, in Queens. And then I went to fellowship in Buffalo, and now I live in the capital region.
Wow, amazing.
The
Albany,
entire
where are we
state.
at? Oh my gosh, you literally went from like New York City and then to
Yeah,
the rest of New York. I
right.
mean, that's no big deal. It's just the best day or whatever, right? No bias or anything like that. Well,
Exactly. And
doctor.
my folks are in Long Island, Chris. So like we
Mm,
literally have the whole state covered.
wow, you literally did like a widespread from north to south and east to west of New York. That's amazing. Yeah, I grew up here too since I was 6 years old, and we've been in the same house since. So basically, New York is home. Sometimes I really do want to get out of it, but you just can't get out of New York once you get in, right? But Dr. Raylan, wow, such an honor for you to be
Oh my,
here with us
thank you.
tonight.
It's so sweet.
Um,
I'm so excited. I can't wait.
I'm so excited too.
Started. Before we get started, I have to tell you something. Look at this. This is my water bottle, and I'm at the feeling awesome mark, and I just wanted to tell you that's how I feel right.
Feeling awesome. That's amazing. It's not a coincidence. I just have my tea here. It's actually getting chillier now, even here, like in the city. It was just like a few days ago, it was like hot. It's like burning hot. And then this morning, I had a flu shot program and I just wore my scrubs, like no sweater or anything, because I was like, it's gonna be hot. And then I was waiting outside the building and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna need the shot. I'm the one who needs a shot of heat right now. It was so chilly. But anyways, here we have you, Dr. Raylan, an MD doctor of medicine. If not known to many, it's such a long road. We're talking about 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, X amount of residency, and then if you choose to do fellowship, right? How did that look like for, well, what you're standing at now is pediatric allergy. How does that training pathway look right after medical school?
Yeah, that's a good question. After medical school, you do a residency in either pediatric or internal medicine, and then you do a fellowship. And the fellowship program for allergy and immunology, it's one field, probably the longest
Mm,
fellowship I know of. So we go AI for short. It's a 2 or 3 year program. And so the 2 or 3 year depends on how much research you want to do. So if you want to do more
mhm,
research, third year. And then after that, you can even subspecialize further and you can actually go into more immunology. And so you can keep doing research from there, or you can go into academic practice, or you can go into private
mhm.
practice. So
That's
when you
amazing.
train for allergy immunology, you actually cross train. So I actually, even though I'm a
Mhm.
pediatrician, I see all ages. And that's
Oh, okay. Got
really cool. Yeah. So in my fellow
mm,
2 year program, I like research, but I knew I didn't want to do research and I wasn't in that track. I like seeing
yeah.
patients. I love talking
Mhm,
to people. I'm an
mhm.
outgoing introvert. That's what I call
I
myself.
go introvert. I love it.
I like to keep to myself
I
sometimes,
can
but I love
tell.
chatting with people.
I
And
can tell.
so
I can tell.
you can tell.
Yeah.
So
I told you before, you have like the friendliest smile ever. So,
thanks. I can talk about anything. I was like, "Oh my gosh, do you know today's like National Coffee Day?" I have so many
I
topics
know.
we could go and run with
I
and
know. I
talk
know.
about.
I know. Yeah, I
But
didn't even know there was like different national days and stuff like that.
yeah, that was true. I looked it up and I'm like, "Seriously, there's a penicillin allergy day and then the National Suns Day."
That's
It's like there's so many
amazing.
days.
It's amazing.
Too many.
Oh, that's amazing. Also, I didn't know that you could
But yeah,
see
so
other
yeah,
patients.
yeah, that was things that actually drew me to it. So I had school deciding what
Mhm,
I wanted to specialize in. Like every
mhm,
I was like, "Oh," I
mhm.
came home and I told my dad, I was like, "I'm gonna be a neurologist." And then I came home and I was like, "Just kidding, I'm gonna be an OBGYN, and then I'm gonna be
Okay.
a surgeon, and then I was gonna be an ER doctor." I like just enjoyed every
That's
single
amazing.
medicine.
Everything.
And I had such a hard time
Wow.
deciding. One of the best pieces
Yeah.
of advice I ever got was that if you walked into an ER and you had like 20 different diagnoses like sitting in front of you, and if you could imagine an
Mhm.
ER packed with people, who did your
Mhm.
heart want to go and help first? Was it the pregnant?
Mm.
Was it the kid that was, like, screaming and was bleeding? Was it the true ER, trauma emergency? Was
Mhm.
it OR, like an appendicitis that you wanted to
Mhm.
rush to the OR? Like, who did you
Mhm.
want to go save first? And I thought
Mm.
that was really interesting, and it really gave me pause, and I kinda carried that question with me to every rotation
Mhm.
because I really enjoyed medicine. I mean, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed science, and
Yeah.
I wanted to be a doctor, I wanted to be a librarian.
Oh, wow. I know you're an avid reader too, so
That's why
that's
I just love books.
amazing.
I love it. So I was like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna be a reader. I should show you the room I'm
amazing.
sitting in. Tons of books everywhere.
Like, tons of books, that's amazing. That was me too when I was much younger. I mean, even until now, it's great to, like, read new books here and there, right? Or even constantly. That's amazing, but what got you into I mean, I know you said you wanted to be a librarian, but what got you into medicine then? Was there someone in the family who's, like, a physician or a friend or a personal experience?
Yeah, nobody in the family. My paternal grandfather was a dentist,
Mhm.
and
Mm,
the maternal great grandfather was actually an eye doctor, and so
mm,
that's a cool little thing. But I never
yeah.
really around either. They were both in India, and my
Mm,
maternal grandfather died when I was like, I don't even think I was born, and he was already
mhm,
out. It was
mhm,
just it was actually my 11th grade. Like it was a project you had to do to graduate from
mhm,
high school. We had to do community
mhm,
service in Michigan. And so I picked the nursing home, and it was like my health and science class and my community service that I was like, this is kind of nice. Like I was helping senior citizens and I
mhm,
was there to bring them joy. Like I was part of the ice cream social and I was part of like the activities club. So like
mhm,
I would come and do stuff and some of the consistent contact that they had. And
mhm,
I only do 10 hours and I did it for the whole year. And I just kept going with it because it was so meaningful and impactful and in
mhm,
ways I didn't even realize. Like I still
mhm.
remember those people now,
Yeah, yeah.
and you get to really know them. So it was more, I think, experience. I kind of decided in my high school that I was going to become a doctor.
Mm,
And once I made that decision, I purposely chose an undergrad that I could stay in state and save tuition,
mm,
you know,
mm.
at
Amazing.
school.
Yeah,
And so like I tried really hard to not carry so much debt with me.
yeah,
I became
sure.
like the party.
Um,
Not everyone is lucky like that, not everyone
everyone, medical
owns a
school
big
is
big lot.
expensive.
It
Medical
is.
school is so expensive. Oh my
Mhm.
goodness. And that's a question that I've asked all of my guests that thus far, who are almost all physicians actually. This path and road to medicine
Mm.
is it's hard not just because of all the studying you have to do and the whole process into getting medical school and the studying and then the residency where it's harsh, but there's also that lifestyle, right? So much money involved, so much sacrifices you have to make, missing parties, missing family events because you have to study or take exams or have to go to residency. At the end of it all, now that you are practicing for years on your own, is there any regret for entering this field of medicine?
No, not for my career. I don't have any regrets. I think I'm a mom of two young
Yeah.
kids. I'm
Mhm.
almost 40, and
Yeah.
the I think the only regret, quote unquote regret, is like
Mhm.
how I balanced my personal and my professional life better. And
Mhm.
that's just a hard
Mhm.
question. And there's no
Mhm.
like I was with my husband already for like 6 years
Mhm.
before we got married. And so it
Mhm.
was, should I have married him sooner? Like, I don't know. Do you go
Yeah.
back and those things? We
Yeah.
have a beautiful life. I'm
Yeah.
thankful every single day that I'm alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't regret. I don't want to live a life
Mhm.
of regrets. And so
Yeah.
the decision that was made with the knowledge that I had at the time
Mhm.
when I
Mhm.
make that decision.
Yeah.
And you don't know me in real life, but in real life, I'm like one of the most indecisive people ever. Except like when
Yeah.
it comes to what to do, I'm really good at
Yeah.
it comes to like personal life decisions. I'm just
Yeah.
like, what should
What
I? I don't know. The pros
So,
and cons.
which one? Which one? That's amazing. Yeah, it's very interesting because every physician I've asked that question so far, they say the same thing. There's no regret, which is very reassuring, right? To hear, especially for people and someone who's entering the medical field. That being said, now you could say it, right? Because you're already at the end of the line, you've been practicing, you've gone through all the process, the MCAT medical school applications, residency, fellowship. But what would be your advice for a student who's still in that journey where every day feels like it's 1,000 years?
It really is. It really does feel like that. I think the most important thing is make sure you really want to be here. Old, my dad had friends, that were physicians that would
Mhm,
like once they knew that I wanted to go into med school, they
mhm,
sat there like hard road. It's going to be a
mhm.
long road. There's
Yeah.
going to be sacrifices. There's going to be a lot of charting. You're
Mhm.
going to insurance. And he's like, this is stuff that they told me when we were still in
Yeah.
paper. You know, like I'm one of the last generations of like.
It's amazing. It's so funny. It's like telling a baby that, right? It's
I like
crazy.
would write orders in the paper chart. You had to like physically get out of bed and on call if you were
Yeah,
in your room and somebody needed
yeah,
Tylenol. Stupid freaking
yeah. Oh
Tylenol.
gosh,
You're
I can
exhausted.
imagine. Now
Hours.
with like now with like Epic or all scripts, right? It's just a click of a button. That's
It's
I
so
can't
amazing.
imagine. Yeah.
Get walk down to the unit, and by then you can't go
Yeah.
back to bed. Fake. You're like the bright
Yeah.
light
Yeah.
in the middle.
Yeah,
Again.
it's been a hard road for sure, but
Yeah. So
thank the
everyone
heavens for
said,
technology, right?
well, thank goodness.
Yeah.
There's been that came out of technology,
Yeah.
but what everyone has always told me, like, it's a
Mhm.
really road. Do you really
Mhm.
want to?
Mhm.
And it's a really hard juggling family life and being a physician. And do
Mhm.
you really, really want to do
Mhm.
this? It's
Mhm.
hard in your 20s because
Mm.
friends that got married and already have children that are like at least 5 to 10 years older than my own kids.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Buy a house until my mid 30s, like my
I
first
know.
property. It's just
Yeah, yeah, it's a sacrifice. It really is a huge decision. Like even for myself, like I was already practicing RN, and then I decided to switch into the field. It was a decision that I had to make like over a series of months. I was like, wait, I'm giving up everything that I have right
Mhm.
now to start all the way from the bottom because med students don't have money. They have negatives. They have the negative number in their name, and then when you come out of school, that negative number is probably double because of the interest. And then in residency, even until now, of course you make something in residency, but it's not enough to overpower the amount of average debt that's been owed in medical school, right? So it's such a hard road, but it's so reassuring to hear stories like yours, Doug, and encouraging to hear statement like yours that there's no regret. And there should be no regret, I guess, because the amount of work that you do, especially in your field with kids, I can't deal with kids. When I had my pediatric rotation for nursing school, I was like, I'm gonna cross this off my list. How now delving into pediatrics, I know you wanted to be a physician and you made a decision in high school, but why peds? What led you to children?
I mean, besides the natural gravitation toward
Yeah,
kids,
yeah, yeah.
me have always just loved children. And so like, even like I remember in my temple, like I would volunteer to take care of the kids well, you
Mm,
going upstairs, doing whatever prayer services. I like babysat 20 kids in a room and I just loved it. I just like being
and
around kids. You know what it is? It's like the innocence and it's also the
mm,
simplicity of life.
yeah, that's
Look at
true.
perspective. Their needs are so basic and I feel like as we get
Mm,
older adults we become so complicated and we
yeah,
stress.
that's true. That's true.
Kids are resilient and there's just something beautiful about their spirit even when they were sick and in the hospital, the ability for them to smile
Mm,
all of the adversity that they face. And
yeah.
even monk patients are coming in my mind and like the bones, that they like some.
Mhm.
I used to have some kids that would get sick from chronic and they were always just so amazing. And
Yeah.
parents, that were stressful as a doctor because you're
Yeah.
complaining insurance or you're providing bad
Yeah.
news. Kids were just amazing.
Yeah.
And like I wanted to carry an essence of that because that's
Yeah.
just like overall I see the glass as half full always.
Yeah.
I'm always thankful. I'm always grateful. I don't know how I ended up with all I've ended up with. And I carry this to this day. Every single child that I see in the room, I'm just drawn to them,
Yeah.
and it makes me so happy to take care of them
Yeah.
and intervene as early as I can to prevent a food allergy or prevent
Mhm.
asthma exacerbation. It like means so
Mhm.
much to affect their quality.
Mhm.
And that's what draws me to them.
Yeah, that's amazing. I do like kids. It's just a matter of, oh my gosh, I think it takes a certain amount of heart to see sick kids. I remember during my PEDS rotation back in nursing school, this boy had Kawasaki's disease, and he was on IVIG if I remember correctly. And but still, he was like, "Do you want to play? You want to play Yu-Gi-Oh cards with me?" And I was like, "Wow, I cannot, I can't deal with this. I cannot do this." So it's great how someone I think it takes a certain amount of strength to like take care of children, right? Despite how resilient and how simplistic it may be, it becomes complicated, especially because of the parents. I feel like sometimes the parents are the actual patients in pediatrics, right? And of course, it's understandable how scary it must be for your kid to be going through these things. But on a normal day, doc, or quote unquote normal day, is there a bread and butter that you would consider in pediatric allergy? Like if you walk into the office, you'll be like,
Mhm.
oh, for sure, 1, 2, 3, I'm gonna see this today.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll tell you what it is. Well, it's probably the top three. It's asthma, it's eczema, and then there's food allergies. It's just gonna be a given diagnosis in my average day.
Mhm,
Sometimes I'll see hives, like a drug allergy
mhm,
or environmental allergies come and go. Those are probably
mm,
sniffles and runny nose, especially right now
mhm.
with the where
Yeah.
they need that to return to school. I think I've been seeing a lot of that, but that's our bread and butter right there.
So a few people have sent in question regarding pediatric allergy things, and I think one of the most common ones is childhood asthma. Is there a reason why it's called childhood? Is asthma something that you can outgrow? That's one of the most common questions. Is asthma for life? Is it genetic or is it mostly structural, like respiratory wise? From the expert herself.
A loaded question, right? There's a lot of factors that go into like the definition of asthma. And I like to, it's like a phrase in pediatrics that has always stuck with me. Not everybody that is asthmatic. Think of it, but not always. So there has to be some sort of a genetic of like family. There has to be some sort of a link as to
Mhm,
classic signs and symptoms of asthma. And then
mhm,
you have to respond appropriately to asthma medications. So it's
mhm,
you kind of have to put everything together. 'Cause
mhm.
viruses, as we have learned, we have been talking about viruses like nonstop the last
Yeah,
couple at this point.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can get virally induced symptoms that sound like asthma but are
Mhm,
not. And that's
mhm,
like like yes, it can increase your likelihood of
mhm,
developing asthma and so on, but I
mhm.
think with childhood, the anatomy is changing so fast. And so we use cutoffs like the
Yeah.
ages. We use something
Mhm,
called a predictive index.
mhm,
And we use the history and we say, all right, is there a nighttime disturbance? Like, does your child wake up coughing, out
mhm.
of out of sleep, at 1 o'clock,
Yeah,
2?
yeah.
Does your child have problems with activities? Like, do they
Mhm.
have exercise induced components or do
Yeah,
they have to stop playing because they're
yeah,
starting? So
yeah.
a lot of that goes into it. So the age 6 sometimes comes up as like a kind of like a rough marker to use.
Mhm,
So if your child is still having symptoms after that, then you
mm,
probably are dealing with short-term asthma. Like we just mentioned, eczema and food allergies. So if
yeah,
you have all of those things, you're probably more likely to have lifelong symptoms. And asthma is not like a steady line. Asthma is
yeah,
like a wave.
yeah.
So some people, it'll just wave and it'll just be gone. And
Mhm.
so I never call it like gone, gone. I call it quiescent. I'm like
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
full phase.
yeah,
It's taken a long, long nap
yeah,
and some trigger it. It could be
yeah.
just certain environment like an office building. I had a patient last week. He walked into an office building and he was supposed to help like pack boxes. And
Mhm,
so of dust, tons of mold, and it
Mhm,
triggered symptoms that he hadn't had
mhm.
since he was a kid. And just that one visit did him, but he had another episode since then. So I'm like, it's like the perfect definition. He had asthma as a
Yeah,
kid, it was
that's
quiet,
adolescent, yeah.
and then yeah. So
It's like a demarcation line of how debilitating asthma can be, right? I think also there's a big difference between like someone who has controlled asthma and like uncontrolled asthma, right? Are there instances, doc, where parent like, oh, I don't know if my kid has asthma, but it's already gotten haywire? Is there a point where asthma is too grave?
yes, but thankfully in children, I would say most of the time we can get a handle on it.
Mm,
I don't see too much sudden cardiac death, or sudden cardiac
mm,
arrest.
mhm.
I hear about it, I read about it, but I think
Yeah,
most parents are appropriately concerned when they see their child laboring to
yeah,
breathe. You think of that
yeah,
tri position as
yeah,
like dream, or you think of the retractions,
yeah.
and if they dip around the mouth. I mean, it's scary,
Mhm. Yeah,
and
yeah.
most
They would
people,
know, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Anyone can recognize that's not normal breathing.
Mhm.
And so we have pretty amazing meds, Chris. Like at this point, I was just counting with the patient. I have a chart with all the asthma inhalers on there. And just the steroid inhalers alone, there's like 9 different types right now.
Yeah, yeah,
Eric's out, and this is coming out.
yeah.
Vice,
Long acting, short acting.
correct,
We have
correct.
mist, we have sprays.
Powders, you have
Yeah,
like
we have
ones.
MDIs, everything.
So there's a lot of like the field has really exploded, and
Yeah,
there's allergics. We have
yeah.
injectables, and yes,
Mhm.
couple of young, really young patients on injectable therapies
Yeah.
because necessitated it, and it's been
Mhm.
an amazing thing. And I see patients that had asthma when they were kids, and they're now adults, and they remember theophylline, and theophylline
Mm,
is such an older drug.
that's an
Um,
old yeah,
so it's like
yeah,
really rare to meet someone that remembers something like
yeah.
that. And Air and just all these older inhalers, and we have such a
Mhm.
newer.
Definitely. Medicine has advanced so much, and just so grateful to science, right? To the amount of modalities that we have now that really is there to prolong life and improve quality of life. I think a big part of it also is within these advancements is the idea of vaccines, right? Which is a very, very hot topic the past year. There's not been a day since the pandemic started, and we have not heard that word, right? But we have series of vaccines since we're like fresh out of the room, right? How vital is immunization in your field of pediatric allergy?
Know the answer to this one. I'll tell you a little story, and this is something I share with my patients. Back when I was a resident in my first year, my intern year,
Hmm.
during orientation at the University of Rochester, they had us meet at the graveyard. The graveyard was across the street from the Children's Hospital, and we went on a walk in the cemetery. We had a project, and we had to look at the tombstones, and we had to look at the dates. We looked and we saw how many children died, what the dates, where the turning point was, and how
Hmm.
all sudden life expectancy increased, coincide that directly with when vaccines were introduced. And
Mm,
obviously, to this day, I remember that. And that was well over a decade ago. I ain't
yeah.
got grace for.
I love it.
So,
Yeah. What a
I can,
memory. Oh my gosh. The graveyard. I cannot. I'd
I
probably like buy medicine.
right. Well, I mean, like in my culture, we don't really bury, like we
Yeah.
cremate.
Yeah.
Pretty EBGB to be kind of like, we're gonna meet at the cemetery, like we're
Yeah.
gonna what in the
Yeah.
middle of this is part of my orientation, like,
Yeah.
and
Oh my god. Intern year, I can't imagine. Oh my gosh. And I feel like intern year is like salute. Salute to the interns. And I told this to Dr. Parikh as well of Purvi. Shout out to the intern doctors during the rise of COVID-19, right? Fresh out of medical school. And
for a whole minute, like they deserve every like it's already hard. It's
yeah.
already
As it is, right?
is as it
Yeah.
is. And then to add a whole another layer of fear of
Yeah.
your own
I know. Yeah.
infectious that you
Yeah.
know about when it first came out. I mean,
Yeah.
I delivered in the middle of the pandemic. Well, at the onset of the pandemic, I delivered
Wow.
last year, and this is my second child, and so
Wow.
lucky because I knew a little bit of what to expect. Like I
Yeah.
remember room, I remember, being a doctor, I knew a little bit going into
Yeah.
that. And I was thinking about all the first time moms, like, and
Yeah.
all the experiences that this pandemic has not touched anyone.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
impacted
Yeah,
lives.
I agree. I agree. And I wanted to know, how did that change the atmosphere in your practice? How has COVID-19, because obviously you've been practicing as a
Mhm,
pediatric allergist prior to the pandemic. What do
mhm.
you think has changed the most since the pandemic started? Is it you? Is it patients? Is it the kids themselves, the parents? Is it your coworkers?
Yeah, probably all of us to some degree for
Mm-hmm.
sure. The logistical end of it, we implemented telemedicine. We had thought we would do that anyway, but we had thought we would have an extra year to get to that. We were
Mm-hmm.
planning in 2021, and we were
Mm-hmm.
planning for computer incorporate like telemedicine facet to it, but
Mm-hmm.
it expedited telemedicine, and then it also, we had to stop spirometry. We had to stop
Oh
nebulizer
yeah. Mm-hmm.
office. So it kind of really impacted the flow and
Mm-hmm.
made you realize what a blessing it was to be able to get PFTs in an office, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
an allergist,
Yeah.
but tons of allergy and specialists across the globe that
Mm-hmm.
don't have access to a spirometer,
Yeah.
right? So it made us really realize, like, the devil's in the details. It's always about the history when it comes to seeing
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
uh, was that maybe people were being a little bit more hurried. So as you can imagine, my visits take forever because I
Yeah.
I love people and I love talking to them, and we're just like business. It was
Yeah.
like, and we got to get out of the room.
Yeah. I can
So
imagine.
definitely had to balance that, and then it prompted my
Mhm.
office. We got air purifiers for the room,
Mhm.
and I had to laugh because I'm like, for allergists, we probably should have had this for like years at
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
point. But the data
No,
on air purifiers is
yeah.
so
COVID
mixed.
really made everyone realize so many things, right? Especially, I feel like also in the hospitals, but most especially in the outpatient private clinics, right? Wow, the amount of why didn't you do this before? Or why didn't we do this before? That's amazing. Yeah, you're right, Doc. The pandemic has not touched anybody, which is so true. And I want to link this back to our conversation earlier about the vaccines. Yes, there's the whole series of vaccines, like even prior to COVID-19, right? Especially during the childhood series vaccines. But now, the elephant in the room with COVID-19. What is your prognosis of all of this in relation specifically to pediatrics? We hear the news of, oh, COVID-19 vaccination for children in the works. Children also went back to school in person. Mask mandates in most places. We know of states who could care less. As a physician who's seen this side of respiratory and allergy side of medicine, what is your prognosis for the children in relation to COVID-19?
Most kids do well. It's a
Mm.
know, and what we know about the ACE like
Mhm,
receptor, and
mhm,
but I mean, I think overall children are going to be amazing and do awesome.
mhm,
It's a small percentage that we just
mhm,
see about, but that's what pediatrics is.
mhm.
We kids. We don't just look at like numbers like adults.
Yeah,
It's different. As
yeah,
every child has
yeah,
this beautiful
yeah,
potential,
yeah,
and we want every life that we can.
yeah.
And so I think it's going to be great overall. My own child is in school and he goes
Mhm,
mass every
mhm,
day. He is resilient, as resilient as I can imagine to be, and his all his classmates are masked. All his teachers
yeah,
are. So,
yeah,
I think that vaccines are life-saving. I mean, I have that graveyard visit I just told you
yeah.
about. I've seen children that passed away in my life, from med school and in residency. I will always think about those people. Like
Mhm,
to hey, remember the meningitis that never woke up again, the influenza,
mhm,
ECMO, and I
mhm,
never alive. I took care of him, my
mhm,
rotation, and I never saw this boy breathe on his own. And
mhm.
I will never take that, for granted. Every single day I get to spend with beautiful children is a beautiful
Yeah,
day. Got to do everything we can to protect them.
yeah. I agree. Yeah, I mean, looking at it all like from a bird's eye view, wow, it must be so hard for the children too, though, right? I was at a flu shot event the other week and I was with another nurse, and she was telling me, don't you think it's so wild that there are children now who were born like through the pandemic and like has not been outside? Like their lives have been changed. Did you think it was time for in-person education to resume?
Hmm. I mean, I
Mm,
have both perspectives, right? Like I had
yeah,
a pandemic child, and I
mm,
have an old child. Got a lot of like, we're okay. So full disclosure, we watch a lot of Blippi in my house, and I don't know if you know anything about Blippi, but he's like this really cool kid, right?
yeah, yeah,
He's this really cool character who does like a lot of indoor playground. And
mhm,
my oldest, we used to take him to indoor playgrounds.
mhm,
Used to take him to the grocery store because I wanted to introduce him to fresh fruits and vegetables. I
mhm,
wanted to let him touch things, see things,
mhm,
because that's
mm,
part that.
mhm.
And he's forgotten. Like he watches this Blippi video and we tell him, we're like, oh my God, do you remember the playground we used to take? And he's just like, no.
No, no.
And then we look at our pandemic baby who's already like 16 months old and
Mhm,
never seen that. And he loves watching Blippi run around in a playground and go up and down slides and do all this
yeah,
stuff. And oh, it's like it's sad, but we need to
yeah,
resume. The other thing I've noticed with sending my older child to school this year is his love of reading. I
mm,
had tried for like years to get my read a book because you know how much I love books. All right, we're
yeah.
over here. And this kid would like open a page of the book and just slam it shut and say the end. And I was like, it's not the end. We haven't even read the page yet.
No, I wanted to be a librarian.
I know. Read.
Right. Yeah, you gotta read. That's amazing. Yeah, I agree with you, Doc. Like, it was time for kids to go back. And we have safety measures, right? Like we always say, it's all about evidence based, up to date scientific practice and research. And what we see is that with good ventilation, with good social distancing, and proper masking, right? Hoping that the staff taking care of the kids are vaccinated and protected, the risk is quite low. And it was time for kids to go to school. It's true. Many kids were robbed of their primordial years of
Yeah, I
childhood
think
because of the pandemic.
well, actually is like keep him home. Like
Mm,
just some other sort of measures that we could
yeah,
all be making.
yeah,
It kind of issue altogether, which is sometimes
mhm,
can't like you have to go to work as a parent
yeah,
and like do you have the sick days to stay home with your
yeah,
child? I mean, kind
yeah,
of leads into like a bigger issue that
mhm,
this been created, which is a lot of job shifts, um,
mhm,
and career shifts, and a lot of the brunt of that has fallen on male in the family.
mhm,
I feel like it's easy on paper and sometimes it's harder to
yeah,
implement.
yeah,
And it's so
like,
easy to get viruses all the time,
mhm,
tons of pediatric illnesses. And
yeah,
it's like what point is a COVID and what point do we and then it kind of
yeah,
bleeds into whole, are our tests reliable? Like
yeah,
should we be distributing rapids at home? Should we
mhm,
spot check and randomly testing children that are in school?
mhm,
And you have asymptomatic COVID and you're still coming to school because you didn't even know. So
yeah,
there's a lot of questions that still come up, but I think you have to weigh everything with the whole scale. And you
yeah,
have to kind of right for society and for parents and the child development. And even with the mask, I've seen my kid grow in like a month
yeah,
that has been, and it's been amazing. I have no regrets sending him there. It sucks, don't get me wrong.
yeah, yeah,
Every day I'm like,
yeah,
where's your
yeah.
mask? Got your backpack? Okay.
Where is it? Yeah, for sure. And how have the parents been like at work in the
Mm.
clinic in relation to their kids? Do you feel like they're more scared now, or are they more reassured now?
I think see I see the
Mm,
reassured population that chose to vaccinate.
mm,
I see an indifference in the parents that don't believe in COVID still.
yeah.
So I still meet parents that feel like we're overblowing this out of
Mm,
proportion.
mhm,
And I definitely still see the anxiety in the moms and dads that have younger children.
mhm,
babies and the early toddlers, and I'm really empathetic to that because I'm like we're in the same
Yeah.
boat. Oh, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I think I the gamut, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, for sure. One of the questions that I've been wanting to ask, specifically being in pediatrics, we hear reports all the time of when certain belief systems, whether religious or not, I guess, I don't know the right word, take over a parent's decision of what medical treatment to implement on their children. Where do you think we draw the line in that? We've heard reports before of, oh, the child or the baby died because the parents did not believe in
Mm,
medical treatment.
mm,
They were just gonna pray for them, or herbal medicine or at-home remedies because they don't trust Western medicine treatments or
mm.
big pharma. How do you tackle that as the set caretaker, medical wise, of these children?
I think a couple of different perspectives. One is open mind.
Hmm.
Start with like kind of trying to see where they're at. Where is a
Hmm.
parent?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the short amount of time that you've gotten to know me, I hope you've realized I have a crunchy side. And I
Yeah.
told you I'm very much an Eastern philosophy, Western
Yeah. Yeah.
girl. And I
Yeah.
think a lot that's been lost to the art of medicine, and some of it's time. We
Yeah.
sit down and talk to their patients, and I'm
Hmm.
always I'm always running late because I love talking to people. It's where it all kind
Yeah.
of goes.
Hmm.
I always try to like kind of meet them where they're at, and I start with
Hmm.
that. Say, if it's a religious thing, if it's a cultural thing, is it like an under?
Hmm.
Sometimes there's distrust
Hmm.
or like I mean, like how do you explain an immune system to
Yeah.
someone that even in med school we talk about it a little, but when I entered allergy immunology fellowship, I read a textbook in the first year and I read a different textbook the second year. And I did journal club every month and I read nature articles every month. I memorized all the receptors of the allergy
Yeah.
cell.
Yeah.
I memorized the ligands and the pieces of the receptor that come apart when the
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
it's so intimately and to explain it in
Mhm.
2 minutes and to gain
Yeah.
the parent,
Yeah.
like, it takes like 10 months to carry this child to
Yeah.
life. A
Yeah.
female the same again. And then
Yeah.
I'm supposed to try I just
Yeah.
met and
Yeah.
all the crazy meds.
Right. Yeah.
I relate to that. I am the
Yeah.
same,
Yeah.
but I feel like I have some of the knowledge to know when I can draw the line and where can I
Mhm.
meet,
Yeah.
and so I work with families on that. And I actually that even happened today. This
Mhm.
mom really into herbal stuff
Mm.
and really like using turmeric and ginger and hot tea and honey as opposed to albuterol. And I was
Mhm.
like, let's sit down, let's talk about albuterol. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about how albuterol is like so minuscule and
Yeah.
the amount a child will get is so
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
So, and meeting the parents where they're at, I think is like the most important. And in my career as a pediatrician in the hospital, we've had to call the medical ethical board a couple of
Mhm.
times. I've run
Mhm.
into this, and if you know that a surgery is going to be life saving, we had a patient that was born with a congenital heart defect, and
Mhm.
parents didn't want to intervene, and we're like, no, no, this is like we can save the life,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
totally in our control. We can do this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and call the board in and it's hard, Chris. There are certain situations it's really hard. One of my patients that died from a vaccine preventable illness, her dad was a vet
Mhm.
and said I can read medical papers, I don't need your help. He told me that and I was like,
Mhm.
I believe you, but I take care of human mammals, and you take care of all the other animal species and we're not the same.
Yeah.
There's some things that are different
Yeah.
from so it kind
Yeah.
of like, meet them where they're at.
Yeah. I think it also a big part of it is rooting from empathy, right? And I think that's a big thing too, especially with all of the talks about the COVID-19 vaccines,
Mhm.
right? Especially, I can't imagine how hard it is for physicians, especially and scientists, who continuously try to propagate the safety and the effectivity of the vaccines that we have over a big pool of either anti-vaxxers or vaccine hesitants, right? And specifically, since we're talking about pediatrics tonight, it must be so hard for the kids who are in families where vaccines are a taboo topic or it's something that's not believed in. Um, I think it's we're doing well here in New York, but there is a demographic outside of the East Coast, certain geographical areas where this is more prevalent and more common, right? Um, do you think, Doc, that there's a chance that those people are outreach to and there's a widened reception for vaccines?
I hope so.
Mm,
You're a forever optimist. I feel
yeah.
like out of this pandemic, and I had a vaccine hesitant patient a couple of weeks ago who told me
Mhm,
that she loved history, but she understood nothing about medicine. And I said, well, then look at history. Look
mm,
at all the other pandemics we've had. How have we left them? You know, how did we get past that as a society? Because we know this is
mhm,
temporary, like all phases of parenting, like all phases of our lives, like residency. Residency is a time limited entity. You know,
mhm,
you're for it, it's gonna be 3 years, it's gonna be 5 years, it might even
mhm,
be 7, but you sign a contract for only the 1 year. Do you
yeah,
realize? Like, you can change that, you know, for how long you're in that program. If it's not right for you, you can
yeah,
change. Like, same thing with history. It's like, we know that the only way out of this is to get everybody on board and
yeah,
vaccinate.
yeah. I'm so grateful for I feel like everyone from the community here on Instagram, right? Whether it's physicians or nurses or nurse practitioners, physician assistants, everyone I feel like is teaming hand in hand to propagate all of this accurate COVID-19 vaccination information.
Yeah,
Because I feel like also everyone is tired of responding to anti-vaxxers in their comments. It's true that we technically don't have to reply to them, but other people are reading their comments and their messages, right? And I feel like we have a job, especially providers, to tackle these issues, right? And to actually talk about these. Because I went on a live stream also with Dr. Calvin's son the other, I think a month ago. He's an emergency room doctor here in New York City, here in Manhattan. And during our live, there was a comment by a mom who stated that, oh, no vaccines have ever touched my children.
mm,
And it's a very, it might not be common, but it's a true situation in the United States and even across the world, I guess. And the amount of job that you have, right, as a pediatric doctor,
mhm.
to maneuver your way and facilitate that conversation, right? And because even for the flu vaccines, there's also, those who are vaccine hesitants or anti-vaxxers, and much more now, especially for COVID-19 vaccines. How do you feel, Doc? Almost 2 years into this pandemic, and all of this misinformation is still flying around.
Exhausted. My
Exhausted.
someday, you know, and I still attempt it. I still
Yeah.
the most like every single patient visit, I at least ask their vaccination status because
Mhm.
you're a immunologist. If there's ever a time to ask a question, it's when
Yeah.
you invited attention of an immunologist.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, bring it. Let's bring
Yeah.
me. Let's go. Let's fire them
Yeah.
all. Let
Yeah.
me. And you know, some people are like, I don't. We don't want to talk about it. Like our mind
Mhm.
is. You kind of have to like think back to motivation interviewing skills and
Mhm.
recognize like we're human beings. Like I
Mhm.
on this long time and I may be tired. If you're gonna
Mhm.
tell your mind is already shut off to having a discussion, I'm not
Mhm.
gonna breath
Mhm.
today.
Yeah.
Discuss it is not
Yeah.
the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think also recognizing the people that are open to talking to you, and I thank them. I'm like, let's have an open discussion. Like
Mhm.
no zone, but what is going on? And then do you realize that? And I was actually talking to my husband about this earlier, but we're a community. Human
Mhm.
beings are one big, massive community. And like
Mhm.
your actions have a ripple effect on
Yeah.
everyone around you.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've made movies out of this stuff, right? Come on, there's like books about this. Like,
Yeah.
there is no elixir, but like what you do can spread this virus and what
Mhm.
you choose to
Mhm.
do. The biggest hesitancy is that the shots doesn't prevent you from getting COVID. And I'm like, it's not an armor, you know,
Yeah.
it's just meant to prevent you from getting super duper sick.
Yeah.
You need to
Yeah.
seek
Yeah.
additional medical attention. And I
Yeah.
think the misinformation, the disinformation, and the hesitancy, while initially, like when the
Mhm.
vaccine came out, were totally understandable, at this point it's frustrating.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted.
For
And
sure. And I can only imagine. Yeah.
yeah, and one other thing for all the docs that have like signed on to our live and are still here, I just wanted to say hi, and I wanted to say talk about your experiences with your patients because I think
Yeah.
parents are shocked when they hear me say that my son's going to be number 1. All right, he's going to be number 1 to get that vaccine. He
Yeah.
can. And I think it really
Yeah.
helps if you share that this is what you believe in
Mhm.
front of them and you say that. I think it takes more weight and carries more weight.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and, when I went on a live stream with like what you were talking about ripple effect, and we're a community. I had a live stream with Dr. Purvi Parikh and Dr. Stacy Delin,
Mm.
and we were talking about the idea of herd immunity, right? It's called herd for a reason.
Right.
Yes, we are vaccinating ourselves, right, to protect ourselves, but it's also the people around us. Sad to say, it's not always about us, right? I feel like also the premise of herd immunity is that we also get to protect the people who cannot get the vaccine, whether they have allergies or even kids right now who are still not approved to get it yet, right? The point is to maximize this amount of safety that we have within the community. And you're right with all of the misinformation that, oh, it doesn't prevent you from getting COVID-19. Dr. Calvinson always says it's like a seatbelt, right? It doesn't prevent all car accidents, but we still wear it because it gives us the assurance that, at least for the most part, it protects us from death and severe injuries. And it's the same thing with the vaccine. And we're just so grateful for doctors like you who continually disseminate sound information about the vaccines that really saves lives, especially in our topic of pediatrics. It's so sad to see children pass away from something that is so preventable. You know, it's heartbreaking. I remember my PICU rotations way back where kids with leukemia, you know, there's certain things that you really cannot predict or expect. But we have this thing that is highly, highly, highly preventable
Mhm.
by a vaccine. It's so sad that they are taken off that life, right? Because of something so preventable. And it is so exhausting. You're right, dog. And I hope you get some time off though out of work, right? To process everything and just chillax.
Yeah, definitely. I thank you for that. That's one of the beauties of allergy immunology is that you can structure your day and you can actually
Yeah.
have, so my evening hours are home life basically, uh,
Yeah.
or charts at the end or Instagram
Never leaves you.
or lives with Chris.
No, but honestly, thank you for gracing me with your time, Doc. I do want to talk quickly about your hobbies,
Oh,
specifically one being baking. So
sure.
um
You know?
I remember I think the day after we got connected here on Instagram, you posted that
Mhm.
carrot cake,
Yeah.
and I was like, Dr. Raylan, I'm gonna need a recipe. I've never baked in my life, but I just need a recipe in the future when I do it, or I'll find someone to make the same recipe. Um, and I want to tie it onto to the 101 before one. If you could talk about that too, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Okay. So it all kind of ties back into allergy, actually, believe it
Hmm.
or not. So,
Yeah.
long story short, once I decided I wanted to be a doctor and was about to start undergrad, I had to pick a major, right? You have to pick
Mm.
kind of like what you're interested in. And my dad's like, you should pick something that you can fall back on. case the whole med school thing doesn't work out, you should always have a plan B. I'm
Mhm.
like, going to med school. Dad's like, just have a backup, just in case. Mom actually didn't want me to be a doctor, and to this day, she's just like, "Why did you become a doctor? It's so much work." Mom's very cool. She's a
Yeah.
realist. So I picked computer science, and I hated it.
Mm,
And I lasted 1 semester, and then I didn't know what to do with some of these, like, biology credits I was accruing,
yeah,
and I fell so I sat down and this is back in the paper charts, okay, so I had
yeah.
a book with the list of all the majors available in the college, okay?
Uh-huh.
I had to sit at the counselor's office at the sales
Plan
center,
your life out.
and I sat there looking at every single major, and I came across nutrition and food sciences.
Mm,
And I decided, like, the second I saw it, I was like, I love food, and food has always been an interesting thing in my life because
mhm,
ethnic, we cook Indian in the
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
and there's times in your life where you hate who you are, you hate your name,
Mhm,
hate the spice,
mhm,
everything
mhm.
with you
Yeah,
hate like curry all the time.
yeah,
Like so you go through that rebellious phase and then you come through this phase where you're like, oh my God, my culture is really cool. And I should probably embrace it a little.
yeah, yeah.
And so I actually have always loved food sciences since
Mhm,
when I went to med school and nutrition was a full month long, it was like the easiest rotation. And so
mhm,
doctors that probably has like a deeper appreciation of food
mhm,
and how
mhm,
it's medicine.
mhm,
Um, and longer story short, I kind of uh, had my own personal kind of journey with food, and I'm at a
mhm,
stage right now plant-based. I've always been a vegetarian, but I really
mhm,
kind of gave dairy and eggs, and I'm really
mhm.
happy about it. And we could talk about the science of that later, but yeah, go plants, go fiber. And so anyway, here I am on social media, and Julie, the founder of 101 Before One,
Mhm,
DM and said, "I need a
mhm.
pediatric that likes food." Yeah, I'm your
That's
girl,
me.
and
Sounds like me.
might have experience of baby-led weaning and might be able to talk about allergies to foods. And so I joined the team. It was like, as you know, my love of books, again, coming full circle one more time. I've always loved reading books and I've always wanted
Mhm,
books. And I was like, wow, I'm going to get my name on here and I'm going to contribute to this amazing concept, which is
mhm,
like family based. This is what human life is about. It's
mhm,
about being for the human race and bringing kids into the world that are
mhm,
healthy, that
mhm,
can like propagate our race and continue us on. It's this world is more than just you or me or my kid. It's about
mhm,
teaching children in general what humanity is,
mhm,
take care of
mhm,
each other. um and so yeah, it's like a passion project. It's a lot of fun, and I encourage anyone that's listening that is like interested to get out. So talk about kind of like just how to introduce foods to your kid,
mhm.
to your and to do it early to prevent allergy. That's the
Yeah.
newest research from 2006.
Mhm.
It's not even that new anymore. It's like 5 years old.
Yeah.
I'm like, I keep saying it's new. It's not.
Time is just passing us by.
It's passing us by. This pandemic, man.
Pandemic. I always say, there's parts of the year and even last year that have no recollection of what happened.
Yeah.
I was like, "What happened August of last year?" Like, I really cannot remember anything. I think it was just everyone's just repressing everything bad that's going on, but one of the beautiful things that came out of it is that, right? I saw it and I was like, "Wow, this is so interesting. This is so amazing." And it's all rooted with that carrot cake, which I took a screenshot of when when you posted the recipe in your
Oh,
story.
that's what's so cool about that carrot cake, there's no refined sugar, right? There is no oil. And oil, there's like a lot of research going on about oils in our gut health. And so
Mhm.
take pride. I'm also a normal mom. I mean, my kids totally get boxed cake here and there and
Yeah.
like what but I also strive as much as I can to be like, let's add some flaxseed, let's sprinkle
Yeah.
some chia seeds in your
Chia
oatmeal, like,
seeds, yeah,
right, let's just, like, add things where we can to make
yeah,
any yeah, not
I
to take a
agree. That's amazing. Yeah, no, now all I'm thinking about is the carrot cake, honestly. It looked so good, and I was like, "Wow, this is plant-based carrot cake? Are you kidding me?" But it's great to hear that you're able to decompress outside of work through baking, spending time with your kids, and going on live streams with me tonight.
Right?
I have learned so much, Doc. We talked so much about allergy, about asthma, about food allergies, immunology, kids and their parents. I've learned so much tonight. And honestly, just thank you so much, Doc, for giving me your time tonight.
Yeah,
I know, I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if the kids will wake up. Oh my goodness. Well, we'll say hi to them online, but thank you for
they're
giving
behaving.
me your time tonight. The
I was like, "Yeah, they're behaving, don't say that."
Don't say their names. No, but it was such an honor, Doc. I know it's a 9 p.m. too. At first, I was like, "Oh my goodness, is that too late for Dr. Raylan?" But then I see you awake at like 2 a.m. I was like, "No, this is the perfect time. This is the time to it's the time to catch it, Dr. Raylan."
I know,
Wow,
night person. It's
your
yeah,
your smiling face always gives me reassurance that okay, there's a brighter future at the end of the road with home medicine aspects. It is such a long road, but to hear it from those who are there now, right, that it's all worth it and there's no regrets. It's very assuring. So thank you so much, Dr. Raylan, for tonight. Anything else you'd like to say to us?
thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for, like, discussing my journey. I think the field of allergy immunology is amazing, and the immune pathway, and like our bodies and what we learn, we're constantly learning and evolving. And this pandemic made it even more so realistic about your immune system and how
Yeah,
powerful. And
yeah,
uh, yeah, it's so much fun being in medicine. It's so cool. Our human bodies are so cool. And everyone, I hope that whatever field of life you choose to be in, like, let it bring you joy. Like, if this year has not taught us anything, this year being all of 21 and 22 and 20,
mm,
but life, let's not take it for granted. We're so
yeah,
lucky that we can wake up and breathe and have full, flexibility of our muscles and the small things. It's amazing. So
yeah. I
yeah,
agree. And
bring-
when you explain allergy and immunology to me, it just reminds me of how Dr. Purby talks about allergy and immunology. I'm like, they're trying to reel me in. They're trying to reel me into this field. And it is such a great field. It's so flexible. It's a lot of learning for sure. I can only imagine. But Dr. Raylan, thank you so much. It is such an honor to have your time and your wisdom and your knowledge tonight, and your smile, of course. Dr. Raylan, please get some rest, even though I know you're going to be awake until whatever time it will be. Have a good night. Thank you
it's
so much again for being with me. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Good
bye.
night. Bye.